Hi and welcome to our class on IBPS Clerical Grade Examination. Today we will be looking at something out of your grammar topics. So it's a welcome relief for people if you've had a lot of grammar exposure. So today we will be looking at another kind of questions that is a constant in most of your other competitive examinations as well. So that is reading comprehension. Okay. So what is reading comprehension? In case you are watching it, please feel free to make use of the commenting forum and just say hi, give me your answers to whatever questions that I ask. Most of the questions that I ask are not rhetorical, so please feel free to answer them. Okay. So, reading comprehension, this is something that we've been doing from primary school, right? Since the times that we started reading, we could, read sentences together, read paragraphs. We've been, we've been seeing these questions in our English examinations. Okay. Now, why is it being tested? Competitive examinations still have a very good significance allotted to this particular type of questions. Why? Reading comprehension is all about given data, okay, anything that is given. So it tests your reading capabilities, your understanding capabilities, and then you read the questions that follow. You make use of your analysis to come up with answers for questions based on the information presented in the passage. So it's a very good exercise of your basic understanding, your basic reading skills, and your common sense, how you're able to ideate based on what is given, so on and so forth. Okay, so that is why most competitive examinations have very good weightage for reading comprehension. Now, what you need to also understand about this is it is time consuming. It doesn't come naturally if you do not read. So before I start off with reading comprehension, let me put it across very clearly. Unless you read regularly, this is not an easy exercise. Okay, so please pick up a book, pick up quality publications, pick up quality reading material online, newspaper articles, and again, newspapers from quality, news houses. That is what you should be reading. Please, I don't want you to read tabloids and stuff like that, and then say, you know what, hi, Deepa, you asked us to read, and here we are. We have 6 months of reading, and just don't ask me about what I read. No, that's not the direction that I want you to take. Read quality publications. That's very important. Otherwise, that's wasted time, and you would be picking up language that is subpar. So it makes no sense whatsoever to do that. So the goals for the class today is to learn how to encounter your reading comprehension passage from an exam perspective. Now remember that when I say exam perspective, our aim is just one thing: optimize your score. How can I crack this exam? How can I get a good score and get into that prestigious university, or get that job? Okay, so it's very important that you crack the exam. So for that, there is time on the x-axis and your score. You need to make sure you optimize these two. Okay. Now, give me say 1 hour to do just 10 RC questions. I might probably be able to get a 10 on 10 in my RC passage. But that means I answer only these and I don't do anything else. Okay. So you need to figure out that perfect path where you can get a good score and clear the sectional cutoff. Just make sure that you are on the safe part. So, an introduction to RC. Your RC is nothing but one passage. It would of course be one or more paragraphs put together. Okay. Now, it would have a very solid introduction, then supporting information, and then a conclusion. That is how they choose passages for RC questions. Okay. Now, this is about the passage. Based on this information, you get questions and answer options from which you choose an answer option. Okay. So, types of questions, we will be seeing that. Now, this, as I said, is your, your prerequisite exercise before you start with RC, regular reading. Okay. So, I would totally suggest the Hindu. Okay. Pick it up every single day. You can read it online now. Okay. So, pick it up, read it. Make sure you read opinion pieces, then, a lot of articles based on banking, commerce, policy making, economy, economics, then money affairs, business, investments. Okay. So, anything else that I'm missing out here? Of course, governance. So, typically when I pick the Hindu, and I haven't actually read a physical newspaper, a paper newspaper in probably 7-8 years now. But back when I used to, okay, I would just pick it up, skim through the first page, okay, and read the headlines, go to the last page, just see what the sports affairs are, the international affairs are, and then come to the second page, read the local news. Okay. For some reason, the local news always interested me more, probably because it was more local, correct? You don't really attach yourself to what's going on in Delhi and, all the front page news affairs, okay? And then I would just proceed to do the crossword, okay? But that was just, a common person, an average person reading the newspaper because it was a daily habit, correct? Today, of course, it's a lot more sorted. My news feed has, the machine learning algorithms online can totally give me what I want to read. It learns based on my reading history and my habits and my demographic information. The sorting out is done by the machine itself, correct? So, then I just pick what I want to read from that and then I read. That's not the case when you actually pick up a physical newspaper, correct? So, based on what is being asked in your IBPS examinations, I would typically ask you to look at these topics, okay? I know it's boring, as I told you, of my newspaper prioritization. None of these have ever been part of my reading list, regular reading list. But if I were to take up the IBPS examination, I would be reading all of this with extra focus, with extra concentration, emphasis, whatever, okay? Because number one, it gives me a good, mental infrastructure and idea about what I can expect about these topics, and I would become very familiar with these topics, right? So when I see such topics in my examination, I wouldn't be thrown off track. So, when you read the passage, I want you to do these consciously. When you read, try to summarize the passage. Now, when I read something, it's not just, let's say the passage is about the Prime Minister's new statue of unity and all that. Okay. Now, I want you to read it without a bias. It is very, very, very normal to have a bias. You're for it, you're against it, you have a preconceived notion of things. Okay. But when it comes to something like your RC exercise, number one is to remove bias and then read it. Okay. Then you should summarize the passage that you've just read your own way. Then pick out what is important and what is not. I want you to understand how things are important. What kind of things are actually adding value to it, what can be, just eliminated from your basic reading. Then identifying arguments. Now, if you have a passage, typically what happens is the author tries to put forth an idea. And to put forth that idea, he gives several arguments. So when, for example, let's say I tell you that Bangalore is a wonderful city. Okay. So the idea is Bangalore is a wonderful city. This is the basic idea that I'm giving you. Okay. Now, in order to say why I feel thus, I'll give you arguments. What can these arguments be? Hey, you know what? It's a very well laid out city. It's got brilliant weather. It's very well connected with other places. And then people are very nice. It's a very safe place. It gives you a lot of opportunities. It's a conglomeration of people from several places in India and abroad, so on and so forth. So whatever I say to support my idea, those are the arguments, and these arguments, mind it, are very important. Okay. So these are the skeletal work of the entire passage. And then I conclude. My conclusion and my basic idea are very related. So I introduce, for example, in this particular case, my introduction would be, hey, I live in Bangalore, I would like to say a few things about Bangalore, blah, blah, blah. So that's the introduction. And then my conclusion is something that bolsters, that strengthens my main idea. Okay. So you need to be in a position to understand what the introduction is, what the conclusion is, what the main idea is, basically what the author wants you to think after reading the passage. You should also form an opinion on the passage. Okay. Now, this is extremely important. A mere, I don't know, 10 seconds back I was probably telling you that you should be in a position to identify the author's opinion, blah, 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 and then you should have an opinion yourself, correct? Now, you need to separate the author's and yours when it comes to opinion, tone, conclusion. Okay. Now, reading all the information, you would have a completely different outlook to it, but that is not important. I want you to figure out what the author is trying to say. End of story. Okay. Because there are not going to be questions based on your understanding of things, but the author's understanding of things. Okay. Now, how do you read a passage? First and foremost, understand the topic. Okay. Now, if it is something about economics, I'll just give it to you in paper, in writing. I am not the best person to understand that. Okay. Economics is not my strong point. Okay. But that is why I would be familiarizing myself with this topic with regular reading based on that. Okay. So, in order to understand the given topic, I want you to widen your horizons, read a lot, okay, and go out of your comfort zone. I know of people who just read the political news and the sports news, and that's it. They just close the paper. End of story. But read a lot so that you widen your horizons, familiarize yourself with a lot of things that you are expected to know as an adult in this universe. Okay, so understand the topic. This of course comes from regular reading outside of your comfort zone. Unless you do that, if you aren't even familiar, okay, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say the entire passage is about euthanasia. How many of you here actually know what euthanasia is? And let's just assume that the passage does not give you the definition of euthanasia. You're expected to know what euthanasia is. And then it gives cons, it gives pros, merits, demerits, a conclusion and all that. So you would have a fair idea about euthanasia reading the passage, okay, in its entirety. But there is a lot of uncertainty involved even in that. Correct? You can be right, you might also be wrong. Now, euthanasia, by the way, is mercy killing. Okay, but that's not what we are interested in right now. Okay, so unless you understand the topic, you can't really go forward. So the only thing that you can do as a student, as an aspirant right now, is just widen your horizons. Then read what is important. I told you that there are some parts that are very important. There are some parts that you can just glance and let go, move on. Now, what is important? The introduction is important because it introduces the idea, the main premise. Then, whatever comes here, we'll get back to that. The conclusion is very important. Okay. Now, about what happens in between. If there is a name, for example, let's say Professor Higgins has this to say, in quotes. This is important, read that, because there is this probability, there is this very good probability that you might encounter a question saying, what do you think about Professor Higgins' opinion on blah blah blah. Okay, then sometimes it's a name. Then you can also say experts arguing against the idea blah 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 say that. Okay, so in this case the experts, okay, their opinion counts. Remember, the experts parts is not important, what they say is important. So, in order to figure out what is important, number 1 and 2, if you have people involved and they are saying something in the passage, that's important. Second, timelines. Have a mental map of timelines, okay, because you can have, the passage might be structured this way. In the 1960s, there was a feminist movement in this part of town and this part of the world, and you know, it resulted in this. Today, we see the same movement in another part of the world, blah, 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 and what happened in between, okay. Now, the timeline is very important because you can have questions based on how do you think this shaped the movement later on, blah blah. So, have a mental map of the timeline, that's important. Then, very important is read the first line of the paragraph of every paragraph, okay, and then try to tell yourself, okay, should I read this? Would it give me some idea or should I just move on? That is important, okay. This is something that I leave to your own discretion. Sometimes the passage gets to be very long, okay, and you just don't have time enough. Then, understand the conclusion. Make mental notes. So, whenever I read, I try to make mental notes. This is what he's trying to say. This is what the author wants me to understand from what he's written. Then, read and move on even if you're confused. This, in my opinion, is the most important tip that I can give you. Not everyone understands everything. Now, this is not a newspaper where you can just spend time and figure out in your own sweet time what he has to say. Okay, so give it a read. If you're unable to understand what he's trying to say, move on. For all that you know, he might not ask questions about whatever confuses you. Okay. Then types of questions. These are the different kind of questions that you would have. One is, what is the main idea of the passage? Okay, or main premise. It can be reworded anyway, but the basic idea is, what's the main idea of the passage? Then supporting ideas. This is the main point. These are the ideas. These are the points that I would like to make in favor of or against something. Those are the supporting ideas. What do I infer? Inference is a very dicey topic. It's not something that is explicitly stated in your passage, but based on the information that you have in the passage, you put 2 and 2 together and then say, oh, okay, that's what he's trying to say. Okay, so it's not explicit, but it is understood. For example, let's say, the operation that has gained tremendous momentum in the recent years did not see much success earlier on. The early supporters of the movement were blah 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 blah. Okay, so what do I understand? Today it is a raging success. Yesterday it wasn't. Okay, now whoever was involved with it earlier were probably not very welcomed. This is an inference. Okay. Tone and style. Now tone is something that the author employs to put in his own individual opinion. Okay. For example, let's say I criticize racism, okay, and I write a passage on that. I get 5 or 6 instances of modern day racism and I put together a passage. Okay, so I am being critical. That's my tone. Okay, then passage structure. Sometimes it starts with an introduction, ends with a conclusion. Okay, sometimes that's not the case. It's just a bunch of facts. Sorry about that. Sometimes it's a bunch of facts thrown at you. Okay, then application questions. Let's say the passage talks about the tax breakup of residents in a particular country. Okay, and there is a minimum bracket, there is a minimum threshold, there is a maximum threshold, blah blah blah. Okay, and then you are asked to figure out how much tax a person earning this much is going to pay. That would be an application question. Then there is logical reasoning. As the name says, it's just plain common sense use of logic to reason something out. Vocabulary. Now very, very, very important here is the vocabulary question. 4 out of 10 questions in an RC passage would be from vocabulary. Okay. Now in order to crack these vocabulary questions, you need not read the passage, which means I just pick those 4 questions, mark the answers, move on. Remember that any competitive examination is all about managing time end of day. Okay, so if I were you, I would just look at the vocabulary questions first. Okay, because it doesn't require much prerequisite reading, anything at all, or much thought. But that being said, you need to have a good vocabulary to actually do that. How does that happen? You need to practice a lot in that arena. So build a vocabulary. 4 questions, that would be a make or break deal. That could mean the difference between falling this side in this side of the sectional cutoff or on the other side. Okay, so decide for yourself. 4 is no mean number. So now we come to the contest question. Previous class, I think there was one person named Apeksha who got it right. Good job, Apeksha. You have won an atom session with HashLearn. With the atom session, you can have one doubt clearing session. So congratulations, Apeksha. Now, let's look at the question and the answer. During the war, many citizens of Vietnam dashed to the USA. Now, I have two options here. One is emigrated and the other is immigrated. Okay. Now, typically you would have 5 options. Okay. In this particular case, I wanted to, talk about, the suffix and the root words. So, I have given you only 2 options. Okay. Now, emigrate is to go out of the country. You emigrate from. Immigrate, you come into the country. Okay. So, you emigrate from one country, immigrate into another country. Okay. So, here it is 2. The answer is immigrated to. Okay. Got it? You cannot interchange these 2. Now, for contest time, go on. Good luck. So, the contest time question today is on vocabulary. It's a good exercise to understand words from the roots. So, look at our vocabulary related videos for IBPS, for the other various variations of IBPS. So, have a look at that to figure out how to study vocabulary, how to better your vocabulary. Okay. Now we look at an RC passage. Okay. So this is how I would recommend you to go ahead with the RC passage. Number 1, I don't look at the passage at all. Instead I look at the vocabulary questions. I am looking at synonyms for spiraling and pace. Okay. Spiral means this is a spiral. Okay. So which of these means spiral? Bending, deflecting, inclining, arch and hook. The one that comes close is bending. This is the answer. I move on. Next is pace. Pace is nothing. Who is a pace bowler? Someone who has a lot of speed, correct? Pace is all about speed. Power, race, pair, sway and progress. Okay. In this case, is it to do with, is power the equivalent of speed? Race the equivalent of speed? Or is it progress? In this particular case, I want you to go back and figure out where pace is. We can understand this particular contextual usage of pace from the context. Now look at this. So we have spiraling here. So it is about growth if you look at it. So this particular pace would be to do with progress. So I would go with progress. Then, okay, most opposite antonym, I am looking at an antonym for swap. Swap is change, interchange. A goes to B, B goes to A. The opposite of this is maintain, maintain in the same place. So within say 1.5 minutes, you can get all these three right. Okay, so this is why it cannot be exchange, replace, create. No, it can be fix also. But why do I say maintain? To fix is to put that in that place, okay, at that particular moment. I fix the bulb there right now, okay. So maintain on the other, swap, it's already there and then I swap it. Maintain, I just put, let it be there. It's the opposite of swap. So now let's look at reading properly and then answering the questions. Look at this. Online shopping is the process of researching and purchasing products or services over the internet. So this is the basic premise. He's introducing what online shopping is. Online shopping is divided into two categories. Sorry. One is travel and tourism. Okay. One is travel tourism, online retail business. Then there are examples of travel tourism. Then they either provide tickets or service. Then there are online retail websites where we actually purchase products, and then you have examples. Then they offer a wide range of products and then they deliver at our doorstep. Online blah blah blah, the first part, contribute 75% to the total revenue. Look at that, 75% of service related requests for ticketing, tourism services is done online. That's important, that's an important number. Then the earliest online stores are from 1992, okay. Then when did it start? With the increase in the ownership of personal computers. Then despite spiraling inflation, e-commerce continued to gather steam, okay. It moved ahead. Electronics, home appliances, even cars are being bought online. Now this is important. I told you, right, arguments, identify arguments. Why do people shop online in India? Internet users are increasing at a rate of 20%. Something might not be available in the markets. Wide variety. We can choose the best and cheapest. We get discounts, incentives. And then there is a replacement guarantee in some cases. Busy life schedule. This is a personal reason. So it's just convenient, okay. So if you go to the railway station and then it's just inconvenient to do that, but we can just book within 2 minutes. So we save time. All of these are arguments, okay. Multiple payment options, you needn't have cash. Sometimes there is also the option of cash on delivery, and there is free home delivery, many incentives. The growth rate of blah 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 is gaining pace in India. So here is where you have pace. In this case, yes, it's progress. Then India is the third largest country in this race, lagging behind USA and China. The growth rate of online shoppers is more than 30% of the outside average growth rate. So 30 versus 6 to 7%. only 11% of India is using the internet. So, only 10 million online shoppers. If 50% get into the internet, then imagine what happens to online shopping. Revenue generation was this much. Okay, it's on and it's going up. It is expected to reach something by this time, 4% of our GDP by 2020. So they are going for online shopping. They are just swapping it with the the conventional brick and mortar store shopping. It has some advantages. You can compare prices, then access to a wide selection of merchandise, 24/7 shopping. Then you just needn't actually go physically to a store. Introduction of very novel goods. And this is your conclusion. The growth of online shopping in developing nations will occur as more people acquire personal computers and credit cards. Okay. So, the entire thing, what have you understood? The author gives you the idea of online shopping, what it is about, and then he says, he starts off with the journey of online shopping. He tells you why people go for online shopping in the first place, then he tells you why it is convenient, and then he gives you the future of online shopping. Got it? So, this is how I summarize to my own self. Now, look at this. Which of the following is not a feature of online shopping? It provides a wide range. Yes. Okay. So, it does provide a wide range. So, this cannot be my answer. We are looking at something that is not a feature of online shopping. All products are available on sites with a heavy discount. Now, you needn't, I mean, not everything is available on a heavy discount. Let's just come back to that. One can get replacement guarantee on some specific, this he says clearly. Flipkart offers you a 30-day replacement guarantee. So, this is not your answer. Online shopping is available all the time. Yes, he says that 24/7 you can actually shop. So, this again is not your answer. So, 2 is a contender. All products aren't available all the time on a heavy discounted price. So, I would go with 2. Which of the following is not true in the context of the given passage? I am looking for a false statement. Online shopping is popular but not safe. There is absolutely no talk about safety. Okay. So, this is a very clear contender, but let me look at the others also. Flipkart provides a 1 month, yes, that is stated. Then it is expected that users will increase. That is the conclusion of the entire passage. He says, as more people get computers and internet connectivity and credit cards, the number of online shoppers is just going to go up. All of the above, then none of these. I would go with 1. India is lagging behind. Okay, we clearly saw that the US and China are in the first and second places when it comes to online shopping. So, it is not only USA, there is absolutely no talk about Canada and Japan, and then there is China. So, I would go for 5 because the right answer is behind USA and China. What percentage of revenue is expected to be contributed to India's GDP in the next 6 years? Okay. Now, by online shoppers, I am talking about the next 6 years. Go back and then the next 6 years. Do you have any data? It is expected to contribute 4% to our GDP. Okay. Now, this is your answer. This is a strict data match question. Okay. So, this is about the type of questions that you would have, so on and so forth. Okay. It's pretty easy. It's just that it's a little time consuming. Okay. Now, one more question. How can the future growth of online shopping be improved? The conclusion is, okay, now look at this. The concluding passage states all of this. Introducing more shopping sites, user-friendly sites, then improving shopping process, variety of goods, so on and so forth. I would go with all 5. That is what is being discussed in the entire conclusion passage. So we've already seen this. So summary, we've done RC introduction. Remember that this is important. Time and score. You need to optimize these two. Okay. You cannot really say, okay, I just have to make sure that my score goes up, so I'll just spend time on it. No, that's not the case. Use your discretion, figure out if this particular question is worth spending your time on. Okay. So we've also seen types of questions. So this is it about the summary. Now CPP time. So the CPP, or the class practice pack, is a set of expertly curated questions that we have put together for you. Whatever concepts have been taught in the class today, you would be applying those concepts in your CPP questions. Okay, so it's a set of 10 questions. It would be very helpful for your practice to understand the concepts better. You can always come back to us with your CPP performance. Okay, and the CPP is available only to Passport members. But that being said, please share it with others who would find it helpful. Good luck with your CPP for the day. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.